79% of respondents reporting having experienced economic violence during the lockdown of 2020. The economy has been struggling since 2020 because of the pandemic, and we applaud the government for putting in place various measures such as ring-fencing the intermediate money transfer tax to support COVID response, boosting the society safety net funding for vulnerable households and individuals during the pandemic, as well as the 18 billion Zimbabwean dollar stimulus package for business. We also believe that all these interventions must be implemented in a gender-responsive way to ensure that men, women, and young people have equal opportunity to benefit from the national program. So as Action Aid advocates for a just, feminist green transition, and the world seeks to build better communities post-COVID-19. Action Aid is pushing for feminist economic alternatives for women's economic empowerment. This can only be realized when system abuse of women, including exclusion from financial support, access to land, and gender-based violence reporting structures are strengthened. Therefore, as an organization, we choose to commemorate this International Women's Month under the theme, when women are economically empowered, economies grow. I'm sure you agree with that theme. So we hope that the discussions here will feed into the broader discourse for women's economic empowerment and lead to a better Zimbabwe. I thank you.
Can we have a proper round of applause? Like people who have eaten, huh? Thank you, Ms. Mafuko, for the opening remarks. Indeed, we are glad that today we are celebrating, or we are commemorating, International Women's Day, and also we are going to be talking about the challenges that women have faced during the lockdown, and also the solutions, or what can be done to ensure that women live in a safe environment where they can flourish. At this point in time, I'm going to call upon Ms. Lydia Majgira-Panze. She is the National Coordinator of Forum for African Women, to talk about the IWD. Thank you. You can clap hands for me as well.
Thank you. My task is very simple. I will not take the 15 minutes that is put on the program, but just 5 minutes only. All protocol observed. Like Blessing said, my name is Lydia. I'm going to briefly talk about International Women's Day. Why International Women's Day? When was it started? Why do we really have to talk about International Women's Day? The International Women's Day is a day celebrated annually on the 8th of March to commemorate cultural, political, socio-economic achievements of women. It does not focus specifically on a group of women, for example, the elite women, but it looks at all women from all walks of life, all classes and different locations. The International Women's Day is a focal point in the women's rights movement, bringing attention to issues such as gender equality, reproductive health, and violence against women and girls. I want us to take a moment to think about these issues that I've just mentioned. I talked about violence against women and girls. I talked about gender equality. I want us to just take a moment to think about this. When we look at reproductive health for women, I want us to think about menstrual health for women. We also think about menstrual health for girls, the challenges that it comes with. I want us to take a look at chronic health illnesses that affect women and that affect also girls because of their biological makeup. I want us to think about the cancers that affect women because of their biological makeup. I want us to think about contraception, issues of pregnancy, and sexually transmitted infections. Violence against women and girls. I want us to think about the various forms and manifestations of violence that affects women and girls. As we celebrate International Women's Days, these are some of the things that we have to consider. As you can see, when we look at violence against women and girls, looking at sexual reproductive health, these are really critical issues that affect women. And as we also consider COVID-19, just as the previous speaker said, these issues have been exacerbated and women are really suffering a lot. So therefore, International Women's Day provides us with a platform as the whole world and as countries to raise awareness about these issues and to just think about how we can address them for women. It is commemorated in a number of ways worldwide. For some countries, it is a public holiday. For some, it is observed locally, and for some, it is observed socially. I'm glad we are having this opportunity to observe the International Women's Day. Significant activity is witnessed worldwide as groups come together to celebrate women's achievements and to rally together for women's equality. Some common International Women's Day activities include radio talk shows, TV talk shows, dialogues like the one that we are having today, acknowledging amazing women and profiling them, offering support to businesses that are owned, managed, and controlled by women, social media campaigns, and many other campaigns. Today is just one such innovation that has been organized by ActionAid for us today. Each year, the International Women's Day is a global theme, and the International Women's Day theme for 2021 is Choose to Challenge. It highlights the importance of challenging biases, misconceptions, in the interest of creating a more inclusive and gender equal world. In 2020, the theme was Each for Equal. I'm sure you remember a sign like this for last year. For 2019, it was Balance for Better. For 2018, the theme was Press for Progress, and for 2017, the theme was Be Bold for Change. Countries and organizations may develop and customize their theme from this global theme. And today's event that ActionAid has organized for us is running under the theme, when women are economically empowered, economies grow. In closing, I would want to thank ActionAid for giving us this platform to commemorate International Women's Day. Although it's a few days later, after the 8th of March, I'm sure the whole month of March is the month of women. Thank you.
Indeed, we are proud to be women. And if we could celebrate the whole year, who would want it? That's good, and Betty. Yes, because being a woman is something that is phenomenal. Moving on, we are now going to be screening videos, hashtag Choose to Challenge, from the local rights program that ActionAid does. So over to you, Zetian.
Tambuzai Chauruka, Secretary, werwa Mayo, Wadi 2, Chenda Mbuya. Ndiri mudzimai anoita mabasa ake ari muwadi. Semudzimai ndanichitarisirawo kuti dai hurumende yatitsigirawo pamabasa edu semadzimai emunharaunda kuti pane zvose zvatinenge tichiita tikwanise kuzviriritira tichitsigirwa nehurumende kuitira kuderedzera dambudziko remhirizhonga.
Shuiso Vangsai, ndiri mugari wemuward 5. Ndiri mudzimai anoita mabasa emaoko. Shuwiro yedu semadzimai ndeyekuti dai tatsigirwa nekusimbisirwa mabasa edu emaoko nehurumende yedu. Zvinova zviri zvinhu zvinoderedza mhirizhonga mudzimba dzedu.
Ndinoitwa Febhi Muzambe, ndinogara kuwadi 28 Nyazura. Tiri kushuwiro yedu kumadzimai sevanhu tinoita basa remaoko. Tinoshuwirawo kuti dai mapurisa agara padhuze kuitira kuti kana tikange tiine mhirizhonga yataita tikandomangara kuti tatadzirana mukati memba nababa wakasika watanzikwa semadzimai sai kukura kwataita kudari pamwe tinobva taita mhirizhonga nekuda kwekuti tinenge tisikurirana mukati medzimba. Mapurisa kana ari pedyo totoona zvakatinakira nekuti nokasika ndandomzikwawo semunhu wemukadzi. Tinongoona kuti vanhu vevakadzi tikataura zvimwe zvinhu tinenge tinoderedzwawo pakusanyatsonzwisiswa. Asi tokumbirawo kuti dai hurumende, tinoshuwira kuti dai hurumende yatinzwawo kuti itunzwawo mapurisa.
Leonard Cheshire Disability Zimbabwe and Action Aid Zimbabwe would like to thank all the service providers in the multi-sectoral approach for all the work that they've been doing in trying to support girls and women with disabilities to access services. We have noticed, though, that many girls and women with disabilities are failing to access justice on time, that is to travel to court or to travel to the police station to get help from these service providers. So Leonard Cheshire Disability Zimbabwe can offer logistical support to try and support these girls.
Tichishanda seFACT Zimbabwe neAction Aid Zimbabwe toda kutenda maservice providers nebasa guru ravanoita kuassista masurvivors of SGBV. Asi tinoona kuti pane dambudziko rekuti dzimwe nguva vanokanganisa kupa maservices, quality services kumasurvivors nekuda kwekushaya maresources. Saka tiri kukurudzira nekukumbira hurumende yeZimbabwe kuti ibatsire maservice providers edu akafanana nevictim friendly unit nekuvapa maresources akaita semota, sekuti kuvictim friendly unit hakuna mota to assist and respond kuma-tip-offs and respond kunoassista masurvivors vanenge vari macommunities. Zvakare tine dambudziko seNyanga district kuti hatina fund yekubatsira vana kusocial welfare sezviri kune madistrict, so tikawana that funding inogona kubatsira kuti tiwane quality service delivery kumasurvivors of GBV as well as child protection care.
Hello, okay, it's working. Morning, everyone. So I need to start off with something really that just struck me as I got into the room. We have got less than 10 men in this room at this moment. And for me, I think this is where it all begins. Because when we are discussing women's issues, when we are discussing gender issues, the men are not there. These 3-4 men that we have here, of course it's a start, but I think we need more to build the critical mass for something to be done. But also on the other hand, when I ask who is in the room, we've got commissioners in the room. We've got parliamentarians in the room. So that shows me that we have women in power or in positions of leadership as Zimbabwe. And I think for me that's something to celebrate. So if we could give a round of applause to our women leaders, because they are the ones who take our issues to Parliament, they are the ones who take our issues where they are supposed to go. Okay. So the nerves have settled down now. I can get back to business. The reason I'm here is to speak about gender-based violence during lockdown. Our theme today is when women are economically empowered, economies grow. We all know the sayings that go, educate a woman, you educate the village, etc. So even when we talk economics, let's also talk women. Remember, the economics of Zimbabwe are on the back of women, because we all know that women make up the vast majority of the informal sector. But this informal sector is the one that is ignored. This informal sector is the one that was forced to completely shut down during lockdown. And as Action Aid, we thought to ourselves, what does this mean for our biggest constituents. Because as Action Aid, we are led by feminist principles, feminist leadership principles. Women are at the heart of our programming. Young people are at the heart of our programming. So we thought to ourselves, Jatanga lockdown, madzimai arkudi. And this was not coming from a borrowed theory or something. I am a woman. I felt the pinch. I have sisters, I have daughters, I have friends who are women. I'm sure tikati ngatitaure tese here, even from ZBC, from our partners. I'm glad we've got our gender responsive public services champions here. They will also share their experiences during lockdown. So we thought to ourselves, we really need to dig deeper into this. Kuti, how is the lockdown affecting women? Because it's almost a year since we started our first lockdown. It was 31 March, and when we started our first lockdown. And I remember reading my situation reports from SASA project that was saying, Kuti, in just the first 13 days, they received over 700 cases of gender-based violence. Domestic violence, Mudzimba, because now everybody was locked up in the house. We all had to stay together, Vanamai, Vanababa, and everybody. So as Action Aid, we also thought, okay, fine, let us also see, Kuti, on the economic front, Jakamira saying. So we had a small survey. It was really a qualitative kind of survey because we interviewed about 300 people. This was done via SMS. We interviewed about 300 people, asked them questions around what have you been experiencing, any form of gender-based violence, what sort of gender-based violence has it been? We asked around the reporting structures once somebody experiences this violence. And what came out was quite intriguing because we expected a lot of physical violence, we expected a lot of verbal violence, but what came out was really economic violence. Lack of finances was the major root cause because we would then ask, okay, fine, why is that? And everybody, we had about 160 people who had experienced violence said this was because of kushaikwa kwemari mudzimba. We asked, okay, fine, since there is no money, what is the greatest deprivation? And it was food. The country grew very food insecure. Now, I'm sure everybody in this room knows that when there's no food in the house, the mother is the one who has to scratch their head to say, what sort of miracle am I going to perform so that there's food on the table? People ended up having 1 meal per day. On good days, they would have 2 meals per day, so nutrition was also compromised. Following food deprivation, there was also sanitary deprivation. So we are talking about our water and sanitation. I know that our partners here present, Wilsa, actually had a campaign and got some Bowsers to be delivered in areas around Zimbabwe, just so that we could do away with the water challenges that we were facing. We are in a pandemic that needs water and there's no water. There's no clean water. And once again, the women bear the heaviest burden of this. And you find kuti that's where panobudira all the violence. Ndo panotanga kutukana nekuzorovana. Fair and fine. We then asked, when this violence occurs, where do you go to report? And majority of the people said they would report to the neighbors. So that rang something in us, because we know there's a referral system, we know there's the victim-friendly unit, so why are people not feeling comfortable to go to the police, to go to Victim Friendly to report incidences of violence. People actually felt it's easier for me to just go and tell my neighbor, they come in, what igadzirisa, and life moves on. So for us, that showed problems that can be solved by people in this room. This is why then we said, okay, fine. What are we going to do with these findings? And we felt, let's call together policymakers. We would have really wanted budgeting, finance, and economic development parliamentary portfolio to also be here, because nyaya it's not so damari at the end of the day. But I'm sure they are following us live. So everybody in this room has a part to play in ensuring that, number one, we deal with the economic challenges that women are facing, and we deal with the referral systems. I tend to digress. Let us move on. So we also then analyzed what the government was doing in order to kind of address the challenges that women were facing. I'm sure we all anticipated this kind of thing. And so the government really did act and ring-fenced the IMTT to respond to COVID. There was also a stimulus package of about 18 billion that was released for businesses to be able to borrow. And we thought, wow, this is good news. How will our women benefit? How will the women of Zimbabwe benefit? 39% of the stimulus package of that 18 billion went to agriculture. It went to the big farmers, the commercial farmers, and where are the women farmers here? Do we make up the commercial farmer? We are the subsistence farmer, and we are the smaller farmer. So it means it missed us. If I'm talking about our RWA members, they missed that opportunity because they are not they are not a commercial farmer. Small and medium enterprises only got like 500 million out of the 18 billion. We've got our partners from ZICHIA, Zimbabwe Informal Chamber, Chamber of Informal Economies, who had their members also apply for the grant. About 7,000 members applied for the grant, but only 500 got money out of that. And Maria Choyaiwanikwa, it will equate to nothing now. Why is this so? You know, the macroeconomic environment here in Zimbabwe excludes women naturally, because you are asked to bring a 3-month bank statement. Ndiri kuzvirimira ndiri kwamakoni, and I use EcoCash or cash. I don't have a bank account because Marusape Imomo, there are only 2 banks, and it's hard for me to get to town. So I do not have a bank account. You want 3 months bank statement, you want collateral, you want 3 months evidence of that I've actually been doing something. And this is just not there for the informal trader. Remember, we are talking about an informal trader here. Once I have that 3 months bank statement and the accounts in place, I'm moving more towards formal. Are the loan conditions conducive or favorable to women? Women do not own much land, so I do not even have the collateral yekuti ndokubatisa iwo farm rangu, because remember, ndrungorima a piece of land that I've been allocated by my husband. Already we are excluded. And then we move on to informal sector that is within urban areas. Those are our informal traders. Vanotengesa maveggie, those that go and hoard vegetables and then sell at street corners. First and foremost, you are no longer allowed to be at that street corner. while the bigger firms get some sort of leeway to keep operating because they're essential services. What about me? Am I not an essential service? I'm providing vegetables to the community. And food is essential, but how do I prove that I'm essential? You know, this is the type of economy that we are living in that puts women in this area. So, my findings that life was really difficult. It still is. And building up better, you know, internationally there's this term that we want to build better, recover better from COVID. But as women, do we have the mechanisms in place for us to build back better? I hope we are going to discuss about these things because we really need to find solutions and have economically empowered women for economic growth. So when we look at this, ActionAid is therefore recommending that first and foremost, when it comes to the referral systems, we need the government to put in place mechanisms that strengthen the GBV reporting system and consider people with disabilities. I think one of the videos here was talking about how when people report their issues in Nyanga, the VFU does not actually have a vehicle to attend to the scene. So it's something as small as a vehicle, or I wouldn't say small, but it's something that can be addressed, a vehicle. That's all they need. The police are there, they are trained, and they are ready to go and assist, but havana motor. They don't have a mode of transport. So if we could resource the referral system, we think that we would get somewhere. We think that we would get more issues resolved amicably. The government should focus on promoting progressive and gender-responsive revenue collection to provide social safety nets for the most affected by the pandemic. So like I said, even Pakabuda stimulus package, it's not enough. For those that got it, it's not even enough. So we know that if there's nothing in the coffers, then we don't have anything to give. But if we have progressive tax systems, collect from the big corporates, stop hurting the individual, collect from the big corporates, maximize on the multi-billion industry that we have in minerals, for example. And then when we make our national cake bigger, it means each section gets more money. Recommendation number 3. We need the government should ensure that the most vulnerable are granted a fair share from national stimulus packages, like the 18 billion, particularly women whose lack of financial resources increases their vulnerability to GBV. So let's have a gendered approach to access to finance, because this continued exclusion in financial market is going to keep women in a subordinate position. I like what the facilitator said. We are not fighting for revenge, but we are fighting for an equal opportunity. So allow me also to be able to get that money. Let it not be for the rich, because you find that the current status quo keeps the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. So can we have those scaffolding policies that also help women, young people, most vulnerable communities to get access to finance? Economic security is an important safeguarding measure for women against domestic violence. the government should take necessary measures to provide decent work to economically empower women. So like I said, we make up the majority of the informal sector. And we need that working environment to be decent. It needs to have proper sanitation. If we are going to be working Pambare Msika, let's have enough ablution facilities. You know, I think we've all seen this video of the woman who is getting attacked by touts. It looked like a bus terminus, which is pabasa pemadzimai mazhinji. How safe is it? People are busy taking videos of this abuse that is happening, but don't do that to this woman. What has our community become? Let's have decent public spaces. Let's have decent working conditions for those that work in these public spaces. Because yes, but it can easily be Rumbi arkutengesa madomasi ake. Achikikirwa madomasi left, right, and center. I think let's have Ubuntu. This is why I really would have wanted men to be part of this conversation. Because it was one woman against about 10 men. Physiologically, she's lost the fight already. But we can do something as policymakers, as civil society. Let's use the power that we have to do something to protect every Zimbabwean woman in private and public spaces. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rumbi. I think the round of applause was for me. Now, you can have another round of applause for Rumbi. Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. You know, women's issues are some of the issues that can keep you awake at night. If you really follow and get into this space, you have sleepless nights. And also the presentation has shown us a lot of things that are not working well for women. But I would want us to really go back to our theme, that choose to challenge. We can challenge the systems, the institutions, the spaces that are suffocating women. It can be done if we are willing, so that we encourage one another that as much as there are so many challenges that women are facing, it can be done. We can do something about it and change the situation so that women are empowered and are safe in all the spaces that they work in. Thank you very much, Rumbi. Before I move on to the next presentation, there's a car, ADD 1268. The security guards would want the owner is Shaba, to go and attend to the car. It's blocking something or there's something happening there. Thank you. Moving on, we are going to have a presentation on violence against women, challenges and service provision from Sheila Nyasaya. Can we give her a round of applause as she comes to the podium? She hasn't arrived, so we are going to have another round of applause.
My name is Sheila Nyasaya. Ndinoshanda sa volunteer we Action Aid Zimbabwe neFaways ndiri kuchitungwiza. Basa redu ndiri kutambira macourse tichirefer kune ma-platforms akasiyana siyana tinoshandidzana nawo. Ma-platforms aya EVFU, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Health, Childline, Access to Justice, Musasa Project, ne-Econet yakare. Lockdown munomu, trophy yedu iyi iri kubatsira sisterek nokuti ikone zvivanhu kuti vafambe ne-lockdown vanhu vanenge vangogara mudzimba. Mirizhonga ikaitika kazhinji kachoni vanhu vanenge vasina kokuenda. Saka iko zvine zvapa netrophy iyoyi vakukwanisa kukurumidza kuwana rubatsiro ende kana vakafona uko kurifeya kwatiri tichivaita kwekwe rubatsiro rwava rukwanisa kubva vakurumidza kuruwana zvototipa kuti totenda nekunzwa kwakaitwa toll free iyoyi. Saka ipapapa zvakare tiri kuti vanhu zvavaishaya kukuripota maGBV cases avo aya ene zvava kuziva toll free line zvirotiko ine tiri kugona kuti tikatanga kudera macalls hazvisiri zvemakuseni chete kana masikati yato 24 hour ndo madariro atakutoita nokuti manheru togona kutorera takashinura kana uri kudera macalls. Zvakadaro tine machallenges atinawo asi pamachallenges aya manje ari kuwandira manje kana takuenda kumareferals uku nokuti isusu chedu kungodayira bedzi macalls kana tadayira macalls aya torifeya kune vatinoshandidzana nawo sezvo tiri kunyatsoshanda nawo zvakanaka kudaro. Challenge yatiri kunyanya kuita isusu ndeyekuti munhu anofona ari pasituation ende zvafanira kuti muse Friday last week apo ndakafonerwa naamai waitonyatsoonzwa kubackground kuti kune zviri kutoitika, vana vari kuchema, zvinhu zviri kutogwenderedzwa. Apa vaita vatoti ndatohwanda murume ndiye ari kutopwanya zvinhu ndopa vakafona panhamba idzi ende pepe ndataura tinoshandidzana nevakawanda neEconet ndo iri ichiisa mamessages saka message wangu wakangoionawo nhamba wangu wainadzo saka pakufona kwavakaita pepai ndavauza kuti ndavarifeya kuvarifeya kwandakaita kwekwe hazvinambotora kana 5 minutes ongodzoka futi back wakati kokwekwe futi handisi kudayirwa ndoita sei kuchichi vachiratidza kuti chokwadi munhu ari kutya. Saka pamachallenges atinawo ini ndiri kukumbirawo kuti kumaservice providers atinawo vatiri kushandidzana navo vaivai pane vanopedzana 4 vaivai tachikumbira kuti vaitawo 24/7 nokuti kana riri dambudziko harina nguva ringoitika pese pese. Saka munhu kana akuzoda manje rubatsiro paipai kwekwe kunenge pamwe kune munhu wani kantu zvine zvakamira sei handizozivi but ukaita 24/7 manje vanhu vanokurumidza kubatsirikana nokuti vanhu vari kurifarira zvekuti toll free line irori zvinenge zvichida kuti ende zvichokwadi munhu akafona akwanise kuwana immediate help pasazoita dambudziko nokuti kana atofona anenge achitoti inini zvinhu zvangu zvinenge zvatondiitira ndochichemo chimwe chatinacho ikoko. Pamaresources apa tikutoti dai patokwanisa kunge paine motikari yekutoti ikwanise kupota ichienda kumacrime scenes ayayi sezvandataura kuti munhu anenge achitorohwa kurudi akafonawo saizvozvo pange paine motikari inokurumidza kuti munhu abva aenda agonobatsirwa kwaanenge ari kwewoko. Zvekare tinokumbira kuti pange paine mukana zvekare wemasafe houses kune vaive vatinenge vanozokwanisa kunge vakunotora vanhu vaive pange paine masafe houses nokuti mumwe munhu kurohwa kwaanenge aita anenge atokuvara saka masafe houses aya anotorwa kubviswa panzvimbo onochengetwa ikoko achibatsirwa zvekare achirapwa. Tiri kwedu iko kuchitungwiza zvekare tine dambudziko zvekare kuti magetsi anoenda magetsi omboenda togona kuita 1 day pamwe todisikuisa magetsi mafoni edu omboshaya futi moto manje saka izvozvo tachikumbira kuti pawanike kana kuti chii chingaitwe zvekutoti isusu tigare isusu mafoni edu ari on kuti vanhu varamba vachingobatsirikana sezvo vanhu vari kubatsirikana sekuona kwatiri kuita nekushanda kwatiri kuita kuti isusu tigare mafoni edu ari on vanhu vachibatsirikana plus futi network inombonetsa futi zvokuti hatisogona kunyatsonzwanana nevanhu zvakanaka. Ndo zvimwe zvatiri kukumbira kuti pakushandidzana kwatiri kuita ikoko tigone kuti basa redu rigone kunoendeka pane kuti munhu aramba achingodzoka kunzvimbo 1. VFU tina yati kwedu kuchitungwiza ikoko tiri kushandidzana futi zvakanaka sekudaro asi tokumbira zvekare kuti vaite futi 24/7 iyoyo kuti vanhu kana vakatofonawo vakwanise futi kuti nokuti vanenge vachitobvunza kuti munoya murimi here kuri kuya mapurisa here asi totongowasimbisa kuti kuri kutongoya mapurisa because vanenge vachitaura kuti imi mukauya murimi munokuvadzwa. Saka ndo zvandinazvo zvatiri kuti zvatatimbotaurana ndatenda hangu.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It gave us hope that something is happening. Pane zvakanaka zviri kuitika. We are making efforts to ensure that women are safe and they can access proper services. Even though there are challenges here and there, I'm sure that's why we are here to discuss. Kuti saka toita sei to improve the situation, toita sei kuti tibatsire madzimai, toita sei so that women can be in business and can be safe and their children and their homes are safe. As we move on, now we are now in the plenary session. I'm sure we have watched the video and we have heard a presentation from Rumbi and another presentation on the services from Sheila. Now we want to really discuss if there are any areas that you wanted clarity or areas that you wanted to share more information or to pass comments or solutions. I'm sure this is the time that we have. Since I have the power of the mic, huh? You know what that means. Yes, ma'am. May someone assist with the roving of the mic?
Okay, thank you very much. Mine are just a couple of comments from what I've heard. Firstly, on the aspect of access to justice, I work with WILSA, so we are a service provider. We provide legal assistance. And just to comment on a number of issues that Rumbi raised, I think firstly for us, what was really challenging during the first lockdown was that everything was completely shut down, including the courts themselves. And you would all agree that our country is a very physical type of system. For you to be able to file anything in court, you can't do it online, you can't do it via the phone, you have to physically fill in a number of copies of forms and submit them to the courts. So we did get a number of distress calls during the lockdown. Number one, there was no transport at all. Number two, like we've already noted, VFU is also very much constrained and the courts were closed. So you get a distress call of a woman saying, you know, I'm in this situation and I need assistance. And you yourself can really understand that this woman needs assistance now, but you are stuck because number one, she can't get to the nearest police station because hakuna transport iri kufamba within the area. And also remember that first lockdown, I think we were working until 6. Even those that needed healthcare and, you know, everything was literally closed. And then those that managed to get to the police station, officer would say, okay, I understand, I'll take down your case. But there was no way to take it because the courts themselves were closed. There was no protection order, no, you know, nothing could happen because courts were only attending to emergencies. So I think we really did experience a shift or a serious a miscarriage of justice, I would say. Although later on we did review to say that, you know, the courts were essential, but at that point in time, and you'll see if you look at the SAFE reports, which was really a compilation of all our statistics, that a lot happened and we were unable to assist. Number two, like what you were saying, when we were assisting on the toll-free lines, there's only so much that you can also do. And these are some of the cases that keep the people that are behind the phones up at night. Because you're thinking, sure. And you know, there's only so much that you yourself can also do. I'm calling VFU. I mean, the VFU, I must applaud them because they know our names and our numbers. Noramba njungu, nai maibanda, saka matindidi, vakadzi vaive makazoita say, you know, as if she can physically do it all herself. But so those are some of the challenges that we also faced. And then secondly, I wanted to comment on the issue of the informal justice, where we found most of our women, and we still find most of our women are. The number of women that we operate in are either, you know, in agriculture or they are cross-border traders, and our borders are still closed. Nothing has changed for the cross-border traders currently. They still have to pay school fees for their children who have gone back, by the way, on the 22nd. They still have to provide food for their children every single day, but they are unable to work and they have no capital. So we find a huge group of women who are still at home, but we are still expecting them to contribute and to function normally with no source of income, no support, nothing. And so for me, those are some of the critical issues that we need to address because, you know, the GBV has a correlation with the issues of the stomach. Kana tine nzara mumba tichatorovana, munhu anokupopotera kuti sipo yandakatenga 2 months ago matopedza, not because haazivi kuti sipo inopera, but because he's thinking, where am I going to get the money to buy more soap? Madomasi andakatenga last week amusisina apa 3 madomasi iwayo. you know, things like that. So as long as we don't resolve the financial situations, it has also a correlation or a bearing on the GBV cases. We can't tell a woman that, you know, you need to get yourself and your children out of this situation when there is nowhere to go, when there are no safe places or assistance there. So yeah, I think I'll end here for now. Thank you.
Andrew would want to respond or to add? There's a mic on your
All right. So thank you very much for the presentations and the clip that we also watched. So today I am a man in here, but representing women. And I hope I will always be doing that going forward. So I only have one issue around the normalization of gender-based violence. I think in as much as we are fighting the cultural norms, it's still quite accepted that the one and only solution to treat women probably is through violence. And this is to some extent acceptable. So I'm looking at situations whereby we have a system. When I say a system, I'm talking about the responsibility of the government to ensure that gender-based violence is eradicated. But you get to a system where if a violation is done and a report is done, and this speaks to what Rumbi was saying, the role that men play. So I'm looking at a situation whereby a violation is reported possibly to a male policeman, who then says, ndezvekumba kwenyu izvi hamuzvizivi here zvijairirei kana kuti endai kumba munogadzirisana. To me, it's a system that is flawed already, and in one way or the other it's acceptable. And this is the reason why people end up losing confidence in the victim-friendly unit, despite the issues that they are not well resourced. But I also believe there are high levels of bureaucracies that are involved. Let me also not shy away from mentioning the word corruption, where men can easily bribe for a case not to be managed properly. Those are systemic issues, strategic issues. What does the House say about those, and how can they be dealt with? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrew. You'd want to respond?
Thank you. I thought I need to say something before I leave also. Thank you for this dialogue. It's a very important dialogue, especially during this time when we are celebrating or commemorating International Women's Day. I listened to all the presentations and a lot of issues were coming up. Let me say, as Parliament or as the Portfolio Committee of Women Affairs, we agree with everything that has come up. Because as Parliament, we also carry out our assessments. And it's true. Especially during this lockdown, a lot of women in particular suffered violence. As Parliament, we carried out some public consultations, and the issues that came out are very serious. We carried out some public consultation. We wanted to really understand the public service delivery system in terms of what is government doing in trying to assist in our oversight role. We wanted to make sure government is doing what it's supposed to do to protect survivors of gender-based violence, or to make sure there's no violence. And I'm glad we are working very well with the ministry. We want to make sure survivors, because as they highlighted throughout the country, the services are not easily accessible. They fail to get police at times police services, psychosocial support, access to justice for women during lockdown. There are lots of challenges, starting from lack of knowledge. Women out there might not even understand or might not know how to be assisted in terms of accessing justice. And this is a very serious kind of issue. I'm sure the commissioner will agree with me. Even at CEDAW recommendations, it was actually highlighted that we need as a nation to make sure that our survivors are getting access to justice in terms of services, legal services, in terms of information. The cost on itself of accessing justice for women is very high. But let me also say government is doing a lot in terms of making sure that survivors receive access to justice. For example, the multi-sectorial approach to issues of gender-based violence, the decentralization of the court system in itself. These are all government efforts in trying to make sure that survivors receive justice. We will also want to make sure that in terms of empowerment of women, more resources are channeled towards the empowerment of women. And at the moment, I'm sure in 2 weeks, I don't know where is my committee clerk is, very soon we are going to carry out another, some public hearings again to really understand the informal sector and the impact that COVID had on the informal sector. Most of the people we are looking at are women. We also want to make sure that government put more resources for women to access services of gender-based violence. For example, if we talk of services, we are of GBV services, the one-stop centers that we have been talking about, the safe shelters, they are very minimal, maybe 3 in 4 or 5 provinces. But these are the services that we are saying they should be readily available. So we are tasking government to make sure resources, besides the resources, because you'll find that those that are in existence are from government partners, civil society organizations, but government's commitment, that's what we are asking for. So these are some of the issues that we want to make sure government is doing its part. So let me just assure you that as the portfolio committee, we are doing a lot. I'm sure at the moment we are also running for the Gender Equality Act, the Sexual Harassment Bill, the mandatory sentence. Together with the commission, with the Gender Commission, they've already submitted principles to the ministry, which are now, I'm sure, we are waiting for cabinet to look at the principles and make sure. We want to make sure that we have those laws. And it is our role as the portfolio committee, as parliament, to make sure that we push for those pieces of legislation to be in place. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Commissioner Chimbetete, would you want to?
Okay. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I will not labor around what the commission does, but maybe just make a comment about the situation, how maybe me as a person sees it, and how also the commission is also looking at it. I think yes, it was important that we have a lockdown because the government needed to save lives. But a lot of challenges came up. Challenges in terms of new challenges that we didn't anticipate or plan for. But it also kind of brought to book, or it kind of brought up in a glaring way the old issues, all the issues we have known about for years, but we had not done anything. Zvinhu zvimwe zvatakasangana nazvo hazvisimbori zvinyowani. Zvinhu zvataitoziva as women's movement or as organizations, or as those of us in offices in different spaces. But we didn't do anything about them. One particular issue, even issue referral pathway. Tinotoziva kuti referral pathway yedu yagara ine magaps. Akavazo exaggeratwa because when we needed it most to respond, haingomuki chingo responda to things that iwo isina capacity kudhara, but we knew. We already knew. Okay. Tagara tine ma issues with the health system. And then how is that health system going to deliver? Not now that yafesana ne COVID. Kuna vanhu COVID vari kurwara, and all of us, we were all scared to go to the hospital. But we as women also had particular challenges related to our particular way and needs of lives. Pane munhu ada kuzvara mwana haangaregeri because kune COVID. Okay. Now that there is COVID, and before we're having challenges attending to that, now with COVID, what will happen? It's worse. Worse on the individual. We are scared to go to the hospital, and even if we go there, everybody there also don't know how to respond to you. Okay? So to us, it's, as the Gender Commission, we are looking at issues from a systemic perspective. From an issue yekuti, how is this issue growing and how is it affecting more and more people? Not as only a new issue. Even here, the cultural practices was a big issue during this. Vana vangani, how many girls are not going back to school? Some of it through violence, some of it through whatever means. Vamwe vakatotengeswa. But we all knew it's not a new issue. It only got bad because of a pandemic. So it also starts speaking to us in terms of how we respond and how we push issues. Not only as on our end as recipients or as Wanwarimu movement or who are feminists. No, even those that are in government, for those that are sitting there as policy makers, what is it that we are doing in order to change lives, in order to bring justice? Because kana tichitasa nyaya empowerment, we are actually looking at a process of becoming stronger and more confident, especially in controlling one's life and claiming one's right. My rights has ongoikwa ya COVID. So what have we been doing, and have we really made a change? I think it's a challenge. Not only to others, even to ourselves, to saying for all the things that we've been doing, how effective have we been in bringing in economic empowerment or just empowerment in general? Because kumupa munu achitanga kuti nasi chenda unotengesa kana kuti for all the things that you are doing, asina imwe empowerment to drive for their own rights. Sometimes anongotengesa chitorerwa futi mari yacho. So the issues around empowerment of women are bigger. They are bigger than equality. They are bigger than equity. We are talking about justice. And the gender justice issues on our end are the biggest challenge. So the challenge was not only for my providers, the whatever. What have we really done for women? And to me, it has been one of the biggest challenges. It's not only women, the violation to girls is serious. Even vana vangocha abuse and so the issue for us, even as a commission, and the things we battled with in terms of even the complaints coming to us, and so on, systemic, so that we are also working with Ministry of Women Affairs or working with the police and working with the parliamentary committee, but this only brought to us the gaps that actually exist in reality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Because we also have viewers who are watching from online, they have a question, and the question is from Darlington to the Gender Commission and all others. My suggestion is that we become more serious on access to justice programs, and not just access to justice, but effective justice. We have situations where some women say, if we report him, nothing will happen. He says the police or or he is known, or he is powerful. Access to effective justice is a real challenge. When we speak in our spaces as CSOs, we are forgetting these realities. How can we make sure the realities impeding access to effective justice are dealt with? Let me read another one as well, which is directed to the Honorable. I would like to urge the Portfolio Committee on Women's Affairs to strengthen oversight, particularly on government-funded programs meant to economically empower women. It is clear from the women's testimonies that economically empowering them contributes to the reduction in their vulnerability to GBV. Also consider issues of such government resources, e.g., a woman in Harare versus a woman in Binga. Also consider issues of access to such government-provided resources. That is Esther Sharara from our online platform. If you'd like to respond or anyone would like to add to them, you can give her a mic.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the comprehensive presentations. For me, I won't belabor what others have said in terms of the challenges that women faced during lockdown. But what I would also want to put across are some of the recommendations from the experiences that we have derived. Some of them may seem very basic, but I believe they are very critical if we're going to address teething problems or rooting issues that discourage women from reporting. First of all, we acknowledge that when the first lockdown started, movement for survivors was very difficult. And you would realize that at roadblocks, there was no facility or no strategy for a survivor to be able to disclose to a police officer or a military officer where they wanted to go and why they wanted to go where they wanted to go. So in most instances, they would be stopped at that roadblock. They have to go back home. The question that arises is, do we have these frontliners capable of handling gender-based violence? Because for us, gender-based violence, it's a cross-cutting theme. It's supposed to be an integration issue, not something that is dealt with in a silo. And if we have people that are supposed to be serving the public, but that don't understand what violence is, we might still have those problems over and over again. It even relates to some of the police officers, like what you were talking about, where women go and report, and that case is trivialized. But they don't understand where that survivor is coming from and why she has come to report. So I believe the first thing that we also need to start considering is the capacity building of frontline workers, those that handle survivors. If you are having an interface with a survivor in whatever capacity, let's be adequately trained to understand what violence is. The second issue relates to the adequate resourcing of GBV facilities, and these also include government facilities. We're talking about the police. I think we've had this discussion for a long time. For me, it becomes an advocacy issue, that we now need to take this step further and say, so what do? We understand the victim-friendly unit is limited in terms of response. What action can we take to ensure that these facilities are adequately resourced so that they can also respond to issues of gender-based violence? You talk about vehicles. The other time I was very, very irritated. A woman called. She's being abused. We called the victim-friendly unit. We are told, no, we are already at the site. We call the victim. The victim is saying there's no one at my place. You call again after 2 hours. She's now outside. Is the police there? No. You call the police. They are saying, no, we are now on our way, changing statements. You called the last time. What's happening? And then they tell you, no, we don't have a car. But you can imagine the kind of information that you are giving to a survivor, that the police is already on its way, and the police is telling you something different. So for us, I think we need to go beyond these complaints and start working on how do we then address these issues. Do we advocate for the VFU to be adequately resourced? What else can we do to respond to these issues? Then thirdly, it also relates to the issues around the referral system. I totally agree our referral system already has problems, has challenges. We have limited resources, we have limited manpower, but the pandemic showed us a different side And I think we also need to start thinking about alternative referral systems when a country has been hit by a pandemic. And what survivors of gender-based violence have to do and publicize those facilities. Because like what we're saying, you can't travel intercity, but you need an age estimation process done for your rape case to be resolved in court. You can't travel. So what do we do in those instances? What other referral systems or other referral pathways can then we use to ensure that survivors can access these services? Then the other issue that we also picked, if you still remember, some other countries like France also developed what they called alternative reporting systems. They would put buzzers in their pharmacies so that a woman can report safely, because she can't go to a police base, she can't go to town, she can't get into town, but she needs to report. So when she gets into a supermarket, she gets into a pharmacy, she has the ability to be able to disclose kuti kumba kwangu hakurongumira zvakanaka. And for us as Zimbabwe, it's something that I felt is something that we can even discuss and design. It's a simple process, but I believe it can address some of these challenges that survivors of gender-based violence talk about. Where else can we report? Kana ndiri locked down, nemurume wangu mumba achindirova. Kana kuti mukazi wacho achindirova, it's vice versa. But we need to think about how we can also address these issues as people reacting within the sector. Then another issue that I would also want to recommend, now that we have Honorable Snakwadi with us, we have the AIDS levy. Why can't we have a GBV fund? One of the reasons why women fail to access services is GBV services are not free. They have never been free. To travel to court, you have to pay for transport. You have to photocopy those papers that they require you to complete. You will be told to come at a later date with your witnesses. You have to pay for their transport. If you are given a date and that case is postponed, you have to look for an alternative place of accommodation. You have to go to a medical facility to get a medical affidavit. Those services are not always free. And I think as a women's movement, we are saying let's look beyond what we have and look at other alternative strategies. For example, having a GBV fund which survivors can access. The modalities and everything is something that can be discussed, but I think just setting this up can address a lot of challenges that women and girls are facing. Then lastly, our colleague from WILSA talked about something that really touched me, the issue around access to justice. And she also talked about issues of our justice system requiring your physical presence, which I also feel is something that can be addressed. This is the world of technology. Why can't we also digitalize? If I want to complete a protection order, ndiri kumba kwangu, why can't I do that? We know already there might be issues around exclusion for some vulnerable women, but violence is not limited kune mukadzi ari kugara kumusha. Isu pamwe munoti tori nevamwe vanenge vachitoti I'm facing abuse but I can't report. So we are saying let's also lobby for our systems to be able to digitalize in brief, so that I can access a service from wherever I am. Kweto ndimirire kunzi unotanga waenda kukoti wonopiwa baba racho wozodzoka. Time yacho nemari yacho na pamwe handina. So I think these are some of the issues that I would recommend and I hope can be resolved. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your contribution. I think what we are all saying is choose to challenge, right? Choose to challenge the way we have been doing things. Choose to challenge the systems and the boundaries and have alternative ways of doing things so that we can have something that is meaningful instead of sticking to what was, because it's not helping us, right? Thank you very much. You can.
Thank you very much. I think I also just want to buttress what my colleagues have been speaking about, looking at the issue of GBV. in terms of what happened during the lockdown. I work for Childline Zimbabwe, and just like what Musasa did present on, we saw a significant increase in the number of GBV cases that were being reported. And unfortunately, amongst the cases that were being reported, the highest number of reports were on the girl child who were being sexually abused. So this meant that the young girls were being logged in with the perpetrators for the whole of the lockdown period. And this speaks heavily on issues to do with child-friendly reporting platforms, or even in general, the friendliness of our reporting platforms. I think I can speak for my organization and also for Musasa. I think we've had to come up with innovations in terms of how we can then facilitate for these user-friendly reporting platform under the lockdown, because young people, even the women, were struggling to conduct us using the traditional methods of even the phones. So you found we received more cases being reported via online chats. We've had to set up chat boards for young people and women to report, because it's as simple as holding your phone and you are chatting away, rather than calling when a perpetrator can actually hear what you are saying. So it's important that from this whole experience of lockdown, we have learned that we need to actually innovate and come up with user-friendly systems in terms of what could have been happening in the lockdown. What we also recommend is looking at other alternatives when it comes to GBV response. Like what my colleague was saying, for one to be able to access GBV services, issue of transport was a big challenge. In some cases, we provide GBV survivors with money or transport vouchers for them to be able to access GBV services. But during the lockdown, we realized that this was a challenge. And we've had to set up other innovations like the shuttle services, where we were able to pick individuals in maybe private cars. But this again comes at a high cost. And therefore, it then becomes a challenge, because you are not able to reach out to as many survivors as you can, because the costs are now high. I also wanted to speak about resources. Resources are a challenge. I think we've heard that for government, it was a challenge to also respond to cases during the lockdown. It was equally the same even for civil society organizations. We struggled because even for the helpline volunteers who come and answer these calls when young people and women call, we're also scared of this pandemic, and some would not take up shifts. And for those few who were willing to take up shifts, it was also difficult to get them to come to the call center. So in other instances, we had even helpline volunteers who answered these calls staying at Childline, staying at Musasa. This shows a level of commitment. And lastly, I also wanted to just talk about, when we are talking about women empowerment, let's narrow it down to even the girl-child empowerment. Let's start to look at these issues from the girl-child point of view. We need to catch them young. We need to make sure that the girl child is empowered as young as they are. We need to make sure that they are able, they know about their rights, and they are able, they are equipped to claim their rights. Because if we do not address this issue of GBV with the young girls, we will see the trend even getting worse as they grow old and they become women. So it is my recommendation that when we are talking of GBV for women, let's start to address these issues and empower the girl child so that we do not have these issues later on in life. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Childline. From our online platform, there's Delight Moyo. She has a message for the Portfolio Committee on Women's Affairs public hearing. She says that the public hearings are commendable. However, there is need to ensure that they are decentralized to even ward or village level to ensure that the participation of women. Thank you. Moving on. Okay, you can go ahead.
Good morning. For most of the issues that we face in GBV, for instance, the referral systems or people trivializing what domestic violence is, we understand that there's a Domestic Violence Act which deals with most of these. It defines what is domestic violence, and which is what we call gender-based violence. And also it creates the VFU. It also talks about safe houses. But I don't understand, it's actually a question that is to the Gender Commission, that there is also a talk of the Domestic Violence Council. The council is supposed to oversight the domestic violence issues, is supposed to oversight the creation of safe houses and even the working of the VFU. So my question is the Domestic Violence Council in existence? Is it operating? And if it is operating, how then is it that, most of the issues, they end up in meetings like this, but then the policy doesn't really change. The implementation remains the same when the law is good. Thank you.
I'll allow Commissioner to respond.
Okay, from what I know there is a gender machinery, and within the gender machinery, it includes the government, parliament, gender commission, civil society organizations, everybody that works in that sector. But the Domestic Violence Council actually exists, and it used to be housed within the Ministry of Women Affairs. Now it is housed under the Ministry of Justice. For some reasons, I will not be able to know exactly what the main reasons of that transfer. But I think also initially it's an issue of resources. Resources are difficult, and they're not decentralized to the point where they can also quickly respond to issues. But the ministry is decentralized, and decentralized even up to what level, which means that there's still an effective way of responding to issues even up to that lower level. But the challenge that everybody else faces is an issue of resources. Being able to respond quickly, on time, and effectively. It's also a challenge of resources.
Thank you, Commissioner. In the presentation that Rumbi gave, she mentioned that when GBV happens and at the home, some responded that they would want to report to neighbors. Maybe we can talk more about that. We have talked about many reasons why they can't go to the police. Maybe the police is far or there are other issues, but what type of help are they going to get from the neighbor? And is the neighbor capacitated enough to really give them the adequate help? And how best can we ensure that the neighbor actually gives them the adequate help? Maybe I will throw it to you, Rumbi.
Wow, thank you for that. So, nyaya kwenda kuna neighbor, it's because women or communities realize that if I go to the police anyway, Andrew mentioned it before, kuti unokona kusvika kuna mapurisa vechirume vanokudza kuti endai munotaurirana kumba, which is exactly what the neighbor will do. The neighbor will sit me and my husband and say, you, chichaitika, say sorry to each other, and we move on. But what about those cases that do not need that sort of intervention? The cases that need protection orders. The cases that actually need examinations to be done. It can be a rape case. So we are saying that while the neighbor can handle issues, but the bigger issues, what of them? I had my hand up because I just wanted to speak on leave no one behind. We are speaking a lot about violence against women and girls. We are speaking about empowering women and girls. I grew up in a home where I was empowered. And I grew up in a feminist home with a gender champion, and I know my rights. But as I get into the world, are the men I'm meeting gender aware? Are they feminist? I find myself in a workplace where some of the men are still patriarchal. I find myself in a new family. Anditi, ndinoroorwa, ndopinda mamakoni, munesha ikoko, Are those boys, our now husbands, are they prepared to be with an empowered woman? So I think that we also need to speak to the boys. We also need to target the boys. We need to raise a generation of feminist boys and men so that 20 years from now, this room will have men and women speaking in one voice. And hopefully we would have gotten through that curve here, Kuti, we are talking about, oh, we still need to resource GBV. Hopefully at that time we'll have the GBV fund. I also wanted to speak about resourcing public services. Because from what I'm hearing from the commissioner, it's been there. We have the gender machinery that she's talking about. So in my view, I think to a certain extent, we have it right there. It's the operationalization. And from what I'm also hearing, it's the funds that are the problem. It means we need to resource this system. These are public services. If we are going to be talking about the GBV response, it's a public service. So we need to resource the public services. Takes us back to what I was saying. Let's make our national cake bigger. We can even have Machat boxes, a police. You spoke very well, and I think Machat bots are working very well. But the thing is, it works to the point of Childline, or to the point of Wilsa, or to the point of Musasa. When we then have to refer to custodians, would it not be nice if VFU also had a chatbot? It can be done as long as the finances are there. So I hope someone from Ministry of Finance and Budgeting is listening to me right now as I'm advocating for a bigger cake for the country, for progressive taxation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Rumbi. We have you and...
Okay, thank you very much. I'm glad that you raised the issue of neighbors because I was itching to talk about the aspect of the informal justice. Because you do have a large number of people who prefer the informal justice, the neighbors, the sabukus that Rumbi was referring to. Now, going to the formal justice system, Taurama challenges, the process is long, it's costly, it's lengthy, and eventually inini ndikarowa, ndikasungisa, munhu akuenda kujeri, or that's the end of it. Now the informal justice system for a lot of women, ndikadedza tete kana sekuru vakauya vakataurirana nemurume akanzi no haudaro muzukuru haurove mukadzi what mbudzi mombe, I've got some. There's restoration and there's an apology and people feel they can move on. Versus waenda kujeri wabadara state, there's no benefit for me. And so it's also quicker going that route of the informal justice. So I think that going forward when we're dealing with issues of GBV, we really also need to integrate or understand the importance of the informal justice system. We need to capacitate whether it's going to the chief courts and dealing with the assessors, the chief's wives, who are the prominent people within that community, who then understand to the, the referral pathways, well, like what Rumbi was saying, that yes, there are cases where maybe it's an SGBV case where we need that pathway. So they also need to understand at that level because they are dealing with the issues of SGBV and GBV every single day. And as an organization, what we've also been doing is to identify what we call community champions and just train them, Kuti, what is GBV and how do you deal with it? Because we acknowledge that not everyone is going to run to the police. That neighbor, that maimfundisi, are the people who know. If you want to know the people that know what's happening in every household, those prominent people. So we need to capacitate them. But I think as a nation, we also need to acknowledge that not everyone is going to run to the formal justice system. Our informal justice system plays a critical role in dealing with all cases from GBV to the least issue that we want. So we need to integrate it into dealing with issues every day, and for that to have a clear referral pathway that people can get assistance. Thank you. That's what I wanted to add.
Thank you very much for mentioning the informal justice system and as well as the church system. They really play a critical role, and to your point, yes, they need to be capacitated, because there are also cases where people go to the chief, a child has been raped or violated, and the chief just says, give each other 5 cows, something like that. So maybe if we integrate it, and maybe they have standard operating procedures, and then they can be very useful ensuring that GBV is addressed or minimized. Thank you very much. Anyone else would want to contribute?
So maybe before the mic comes to you, I wanted to respond, or maybe to buttress some of the points that have been raised by Rumbidzai. In fact, I think this is one of the points that have been raised by most of the people that have spoken in this room. To say that the Bible says money is the root of all evil. But I would like to say that money is the root of women's liberation. Because, why am I saying that? We need to resource public services, whereby we get women being assisted when they need that kind of support. Number 2, I wanted to speak to the point raised by the the chairperson, I think she has left, with regards to the Gender Equality Act that she alluded to say that if you go into the community, what you would see is men who do not allow women to take up job opportunities, who do not allow women to further their education. Kazhinji kacho kana zvakadaro zvinotaura kuti varume ivavo vadzvinyiriri. This is more like a deep word, or maybe a deep phrase that I'm using. But I would like to think of it in the sense of the Gender Equality Act. What is it going to do to speak to those issues? Because if we look at it, we are saying that gender-based violence is a construct of the economy, or maybe is an economic construct. It also means that if women are not allowed to go to school, if women are not also allowed to take up job opportunities, it means that even though if someone does not raise their hand to beat the woman, they are still practicing gender-based violence. So it's important that the gender-based violence, the Gender Equality Act also speaks to those issues. Lastly, I want to say that it's also important, it's unfortunate that she has left. It's also important that the Gender Equality Act is not only spoken of at parliament level, but it actually comes from the people. What does GBV, or I mean, what does gender equality mean in the context of Zimbabwe, whereby we have the majority of women in the informal sector? So in that sense, it means that the people who are experiencing these lived realities have to speak for themselves what they would want to be included in this Gender Equality Act. This was my submission. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll read Winnet Joa's contribution from our online platform. She says decentralization of services is important so that rural women and those in poverty can access services such as age estimation and psychiatric assessments that are done centrally in Harare. Decentralizing and capacitating district medical officers will help to reduce the burden on rural women who cannot afford to travel all the way to Harare. Thank you. We can have another contribution.
My contribution is, it's like what the last speaker was saying. Ini changu changa chiri chikumbiro chokuti isu sema gender champions. Dai paita iyo pane nyaya imwe yakatowaradza munhu wese kuma communities. Munhukadzi akaenda kubasa. Akatotraina for 3 months. Training yacho ndeye 6 months. And imagine kuti training yacho inorwadza sei. Mukadzi iyoyo pakabva pakapiwa ma-off days ake okuti auye kumba. murume paakazoona ipayslip nemari yakamurati taona help kuma-communities iwayo kuti dai taona ihelp kuma-communities handiti zvava zviri nani tikazopiwa i-education kuti vanhurume nevanhukadzi vazive ma-importance yekuti kana munhukadzi anzi aenda kubasa anenge achida kuita sei kuti family yake anokwanisa kudzidzisa vana vacho vese saka isu tikasawana i-education kuma-communities I don't think kuti tichapedza iGBV muZimbabwe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it goes back to the point, Yarumbi, Yekuti, let's not leave the men behind. Because when we leave them and we are empowered and we are successful, they'll get jealous and try to pull us down. Thank you very much for your contribution. You may go ahead.
Okay. I want to look at the ripple effects of the lockdown on GBV issues and also looking at the economic environment and why we have communities running to the informal justice system. First, from the presentations that were given by the other presenters, taona kuti the lockdown, like women, they constitute the greater chunk of the informal trade. And nyaya dzechikafu have led to GBV in homes. And there we're also seeing, in our area, especially from the area that I come from, we're also seeing quite a chunk of girls, teen pregnancies. And because of the same violence in the homes and due to the frustrations of lockdown, we are seeing also nyaya child marriages. And in our communities, we have also trained community watchdogs, vanenge vari responsible for nyaya GBV in the communities. But now, because of especially nyaya harmonization of mutemo marriage, there is this, the 18 years, and also the age of consent here, 16 years. So at times, mama marriages acho ari kutoitika vana vari kuenda kuchikoro, maybe watova kuma 18 years, maybe ma form 5, form 6. But now these empowered community champions, they are now resorting now to these informal justice systems, simply because vari kuti vakaenda ku police kuno reporter. Even when are 16 or 17, there's still not that harmonization of the two. Saka people wakungota, well, it's just a waste of time kuenda ku police. So inini, well, tichiro kungochemera kuti can we have that harmonization of those laws? Yeah, 16 age of consent ne marriage, kuti zvibatane, so that when people report cases, because they are there, the champions are there in the communities who have been empowered to report on such cases, but because of nothing is being done, wakaenda kumapurisa, hapana chiri kubuda. So I think, yeah.
Thank you very much for your contribution. I think my take home there is that we should push for the new Marriage Act for the Marriage Act to be harmonized, so that this gap can be closed, because most perpetrators are taking advantage of this 16, 18 age of consent, and they use that to their advantage. So I think we have come to an end of our plenary session, unless if there's someone who has something which is really burning. Okay, you'll be my last.
It's not, I don't know whether it's really burning, but it was just a contribution.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Just to support others who were earlier on saying we need to raise a transformed generation. We also need to, we need to catch them while they are still young for this new generation. So maybe there's also need to integrate the gender and SGBV into our education system for them to be transformed. Maybe we should start even earlier. And also besides the acts and also the laws, for the people in the community down there to appreciate that, they don't even appreciate that marrying someone who is 15 years is wrong. For them, there's nothing wrong with that. So there's also need to educate the communities for them to understand that it is wrong, and what will be wrong by marrying someone who is below the age of 15. So I was just busted, trying to support the point of teaching them while they're still young into our education system, and also into the adolescent sexual reproductive health program, especially through the comprehensive sexuality education, where we are integrating gender roles, gender equality, and also all those issues to do with gender equality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. I'm glad that I've given you the time to talk, because we have missed this very important point of integrating this into the education system so that we can catch them young. Because when they are old, to try to tell them that a woman is equal to you, they'll just think, these empowered women have started. So if we teach them young and they understand that it is good to raise boys the same way we raise girls, they'll then appreciate when we talk about women empowerment and equality. Thank you very much, ma'am. Without taking much of your time, we have come a long way. I have a lot of take-homes that I have that I can't share with you, because I'm sure Shamiso is ready to come and give us the way forward. Let's put our hands together for Shamiso as she comes.
Morning, everyone. I'm not here to give you the way forward, but we're going to come up with the way forward together. Tese muno. Kuti as WULSA, we have said we want my referral pathways are efficient. As Action Aid, we have said several things. Parliament, way forward together, Kuti, in our respective spaces that we operate in, what are we going to do and by when? Dishoka. So I'm going to write per flip chart, Kuti, Parliament. Parliament. All right, so we start with Parliament. What do we want Parliament to do and by when? So that in the end, we harvest our outcomes. Kuti, Muswa 26, we had this meeting. And we dedicated Kuti, we want to do this. Takazviita here, sematauriro atani takazviita. So can we, Parliament is Vachirimo? The Commission, okay. We can start with the Commission.
Okay, thank you. There was an issue that was raised on the harmonization on the age of consent and the consent, the age of consent is at 16, and the marriage age is at 18, is provided for in the Constitution of Zimbabwe. As Zimbabwe Gender Commission, we are going to follow up on this issue because we've been working on it. So this is one area that we are going to look at. I thank you.
Can we have a timeline, Kuti, by when do you expect to do this?
That one is, I can't give a timeline, it's difficult. Because like when the chairperson of the portfolio committee was in here, she highlighted that we also submitted sexual harassment principles to the ministry for the Gender Equality Act. So those ones, we wait for when the cabinet will sit and agree on the issues. And for us as Zimbabwe Gender Commission, we submit to the relevant ministry. That is the Ministry of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs. So for us to give you a timeline, it's quite difficult. Because if we submit to the responsible ministry, then they'll also submit to Parliament or Cabinet. So I can't give a timeline.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, no, I just wanted clarity from the Commission. Are you wanting to raise the age of consent to 18? What is your recommendation, just out of curiosity? Thank you.
I think this issue yakaresolveka kare. Haina kumbotanga nhasi. There was issue harmonization of the two. And I think yakaagreewa kuti yese iende pa 18 years, anditi? From adults, okay. From the young ones, Panama issues. But I think the follow-up at Tina and Deputy, this has taken so long to resolve. So we want a resolve to it. So Nekungo Ziwakuti iri papi, and what's really stalling the finalization of this.
Okay, thank you so much, Gender Commission. Do you have something else? Okay. Anyone to add?
I just need some clarification on the issue of the age of consent and the age of, because from the adolescent sexual reproductive health point of view, the issues were around the confusion between the age of consent to sex and the age of consent to access to services. So what the young people were saying, they were saying age should not be a barrier to accessing sexual and reproductive health services. But it seems there was a confusion on the application of the age of consent to sex, which is at 16, which was meant to protect young girls from abuse. But that law was then being used to deny access to sexual and reproductive health services by adolescents and young girls. So they were advocating for there to be a separation between the age of consent to services and the age of consent to sex. Thank you.
I think on
excuse me, ma'am, sorry, I have a short announcement. The ZTN would want to stop their broadcasting because they were doing live. So they just want us to pause a bit so that they can shift their things and then we move on. We are no longer live. We will no longer be live. Okay, thank you.